Hi everyone. So we're looking at three different things today: the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, the Australian Dietary Guidelines, and various nutrition campaigns. So what we're first going to be looking at is the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating. Now this is a government campaign which is based on nutrition. That's used as a guide for anyone that wants to eat healthily, which is one of the government's responsibilities. Now, the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating has actually changed. So we have the old version on the left here, and then we have the new version on the right, which is from 2013. So if we have a look at the old Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, we can see that 80% of what we should get are from three plant food groups, which are these ones, this one, and this one. And the remaining 20% is presented by animal groups, which is your dairy and your meat. Now, extra foods are portrayed as those that may be eaten sometimes or in small amounts, which are in the corner here. And it does also include oils, and margarines are included with extra foods. Now, this has actually changed, which we will look at the new version, because they have now realized that not all fats are created equally. Now, they do tell you to drink plenty of water. So moving on to the new one, you'll see that there's a greater focus on food and serving size. There's also, they've separated in the good fats here and the bad fats over here. There is a greater emphasis on foods with added salt and sugar as well. So you notice that there's low fat and low sodium, low sugar berries, as well as they've changed the foods from extra foods to discretionary choices, which are these ones here. So they have placed highly processed meats and sausages in the discretionary choices, which previously they had put them in with the actual meat in um, here, whereas they're now looking at healthier protein sources. And you'll also notice that they have incomplete protein sources as those as well, which is really taking into consideration the amount of people that are now either vegan or vegetarian. So the other guide that is in Australia is the Healthy Eating Pyramid, which some of you may have come across. It's by Nutrition Australia, and we have the old version, which is from 1982. These are older versions. Then we've got the new version, which is on the next slide. So the base obviously includes foods that we should eat the most, and then you've got small amount of foods as well. So they do include a tick for water as well as no salt. However, if you have a look at what's in here and here as well, some of these again are healthy but could be better described as being healthy if they had more of an approach like what we see here. So they've updated it for the first time in 15 years, and they have talked about healthy fats. You can see olive oil is up there, whereas over here they've got butter in here and they've got sugar, whereas that's not even included at all in the new healthy eating pyramid. So you'll see that there is now it's legumes and vegetables, with only a small portion of that being fruit, which is something that we didn't see previously. The grains are now separated out, whereas before they were all lumped in together. And then you've got your dairy, and then your meat, and then your healthy fat. So this pyramid actually is now is 5 food groups and then healthy fats, which is similar to the 5 food groups that we see for the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating. Okay, so there are some others that have been looked at in the past, which is the Commonwealth for Healthy Eating, but there's no symbols, so there's no fiber removed or no sugar or salt it needs to be removed or is not added. And you can see that it's pretty hard to read as well. They do kind of have the food groups, but there's no definition as to what kind of grains you should be eating, the type of fish and I guess meat. And you'll notice that the butter and table margarine is actually included rather as put on the side by others. So then you've also got the CSIRO and the Cancer Council, which has also done a food and nutrition plan. And you can see that they've got a 6 kind of level pyramid going on here. Again, where they've got, oh, this is really pixelated, but it's, oh, sorry. It's 5 serves of bread and cereal, 4 serves of vegetables, 3 serves of fruit, 2 serves of milk products, a serve of meat or alternative, and one indulgent form, whether that be 2 standard drinks of alcohol, a piece of small cake, biscuits, uh, crisps or corn chips, and ice cream. So then you've also got all of the different food guides from around the world. So we've got Canada's food guide here, we've got Mexico's food guide, uh, we've got some others. I would recommend that you do download the PowerPoint to have a look at these in more detail, because it's very likely there's always a question in the exam looking at the comparison of someone else's food guide, so another country's food guide, and the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating. So you need to be able to compare those and look for similarities and differences. So here's some other food guides that I won't go through, but you can see that there are a lot of different food guides. Even within Australia, we've got several that can be used. So now we're going to move into the Australian Dietary Guidelines. So the aim of the Australian Dietary Guidelines is the Eat for Health program, and it's to provide Australians and health professionals with the information needed to attain good health, but also well-being as well. Now, this document, the Australian Dietary Guidelines Summary, I have put it up on Moodle. It's in the weekly work. Can you please download it, because you need to become incredibly familiar with this document. It's only about 40 pages long, but most of it includes all of the diagrams and graphs that are really, really useful, particularly for the end of year exam, but also for the next investigation as well. So the first guideline is to achieve and maintain a healthy weight, be physically active, and choose amounts of nutritious food and drinks to meet your energy needs. So they do have an emphasis on children and adolescents. They need a higher amount of energy. They also need more physical activity, and they need their growth should be checked regularly to make sure they don't have any nutrient deficiency. So they do have an emphasis on older people as well, making sure they have nutritious foods and keep physically active to maintain their muscle strength as well as their bone density, which we were talking about last week, and also a healthy weight to avoid any diet-related diseases like cardiovascular disease, hypertension, or diabetes. So guideline 2 is to enjoy a wide variety of nutritious foods from these 5 groups every day. So they're recommending plenty of vegetables, fruit, grain as well, lean meats and poultry. So the emphasis on lean is there right from the get-go. You've also got milk and any alternatives, and you want mostly reduced fat options, and they want you to drink plenty of water as well. So the nutritional characteristics of the 5 groups are thus, and I'm not going to go through them, you can have a look at that in your own time. So guideline 3 is to limit the intake of foods containing saturated fat, added salt, added sugars, and alcohol. So these are to prevent diet-related diseases, whether that be cardiovascular disease, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, or liver disease, or any types of cancers can also be associated with some of these foods as well. So guideline 3 also includes, so you needing to limit your intake of food and drinks that contain added salt and sugar, and limiting your consumption of alcohol. They also recommend that alcohol is not to be consumed through pregnancy or breastfeeding, or if you're planning to become pregnant, because of the side effects of alcohol. So guideline 4 is to encourage, support, and promote best breastfeeding, which is only applicable obviously in some scenarios. And guideline 5 is to look to make sure that you care for your food, prepare and store it safely. So we will be talking about food preparation and storage later in the course. So that's the last one, and that's to make sure that you don't make yourself sick, so there isn't any outbreaks of salmonella or E. coli. So one of the reasons why we need consuming foods that are high in fat is that because it increases the flavor and texture of those foods to make them more tasty. Some foods do contain essential fatty acids that do provide some vitamins. So we need to think about the types of fats that we're consuming, but we still need to use them in small amounts as anyway. Because remember, if you start consuming more kilojoules than you are expending, you are going to gain weight over a period of time. So these are your discretionary choices, or your sometimes and only in small amounts. So you've got cookies in there. So like the Cookie Monster, cookies are now only a sometimes food. And you should be thinking about when looking at these foods, what's wrong with them. So you could be thinking about whether they're energy dense, what micronutrients do they have in them, or macronutrients that might be detrimental to your health, and perhaps the impact they might have on you in terms of diseases that could develop. So the thing is that with these discretionary choices, the reason why they even suggest that you do have suggest that you are allowed to have discretionary choices is because no one has fantastic willpower. Humans will, food is also a pleasure as much as it is sustenance, and people will often indulge in that in ways of whether it be sweet or salty or alcoholic food, beverages. So the Australian Guide to Health, like Dietary Guidelines, do acknowledge that you will be making discretionary choices, but it's obviously to limit them and only have them sometimes in small amounts, rather than cutting them all out together because it's not going to be possible. Most people can't do it. So the five food groups are reflected of foods that are commonly consumed in Australia, which makes it really easy and relevant for people here. There is a great range of foods within each food group. So you'll notice there's a huge range of vegetables, there's a huge range of grains, because when it comes to eating healthy, you don't want to be eating the same 5 meals every week. You want to have variety, and that's one way people do enjoy the taste of food. So you need to be thinking about that too. Also, when it comes particularly vegetables and fruits, if you've got variety, you can usually be able to pick in-season fruit and vegetable, which means that it will cost less, which is another reason why variety is really important. Now, you will notice that they've packaged foods as well to make it easier for people to look and identify those foods. And you also notice that there's a huge shift towards whole grain and lower fat products. So all of these grains are whole grains. You've got lean meats and vegetables, and then you've also got dairy and milk and cheese that are all reduced fat as well. So there is the recommendation for serving size, and that is a set amount that doesn't change and used for the serves per day, which can be found in that summary booklet that's on Moodle. And then you've got portion size. So that's actually the amount of individuals actually need to eat, and this will depend on their energy requirements. So it's actually how many servings do you need to then make your portion size. So we've got our food groups. So we know that there's five food groups: vegetables, fruits, grains, lean meats and poultry, and milk, yogurt, cheese, and all their dairy alternatives. So vegetables provide us with variety and in terms of color. So that will give us all our micronutrients. They also provide us with helping to reduce the risk of obesity as well as chronic diseases like heart disease and some cancer. They're also low in energy, which means that you have a higher variety of vegetables and legumes. That's important for maintaining a healthy weight. So a serving of vegetable could look like any of the following. So fruit is there to provide us with helping us to reduce risk of chronic diseases like heart disease and cancer. They are low energy density, which means diets usually include relatively high amounts of fruit, which may also help to maintain a healthy weight. So fruit is also a good source of vitamin, including vitamin C and folate. It also provides potassium, dietary fiber, and carbohydrates in the form of natural sugars. Edible skins, like apple, for example, are usually high in dietary fiber, but there is also dietary fiber in the flesh as well. So it's really important that you eat a variety of fruit because you'll get a variety of micronutrients. So different servings of fruit can look like the following options. And then we're moving on to grains. So what vitamins do grains provide us with? So grains include wheat, oat, rice, rye, barley, millet, quinoa, and corn. They can be eaten cooked or whole, can be ground into a flour or turned into a cereal. Um, the consumption of grain foods usually help to reduce the risk of heart disease by lowering HDL or LDL, type 2 diabetes, as well as excessive weight gain and some cancers. They do also provide nutrients including carbohydrates, protein, dietary fiber, as well as vitamins and minerals like folate, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, vitamin E, and iron as well. So there are some groups of foods within this group that do need processing. So B1 and folic acid need to be added to wheat flour used in bread making, and therefore we get a few more nutrients in there as well. And this does include both refined and whole grain varieties, but the wholemeal or whole grain varieties are preferred because they do have more dietary fiber, and also contain more vitamins and minerals. So if we have a look at what a serving of grain looks like, we've got a whole bunch of different options there. This information is going to be really important for your next investigation. So then we've got our lean meat and poultry, fish, eggs, tofu, nuts, and seeds. So some of the benefits of these groups is that they include protein, iron, zinc, and other minerals and vitamins, particularly the B group ones. Also, nuts and seeds will provide you with essential fatty acids, so your unsaturated fat, as well as vitamin E. So your lean meats are a particularly good source of iron, zinc, and vitamin B12. However, the consumption of no more than 455 grams per week of red meat is recommended. So that's about 100 to 120 grams per day, because if you have more than that, there is actually an increased risk of developing colorectal cancer. And then we obviously have what different types of lean meats and other alternatives will look like as well. And then we have our last group, which is our milk, yogurt, cheese, and other dairy alternatives. So these are all high in calcium, obviously, but they can also include other sources of nutrients, including protein, iodine, riboflavin, and vitamin B1. They help to reduce the risk of high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and some cancers. Some of these may be have increased saturated fat or energy, so it's important that you don't choose the full fat options if there's a diet option available. Now, obviously, they can have different servings as well, depending on what it is. And that's basically the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating. So the last thing that we're going to look at is some of the nutrition campaigns, particularly that Australia has been running. So I'm sure all of you have heard about the National Go for 2 and 5 campaign and the Vegetable Man. That is usually a pretty kid-friendly, informative way of informing people about how to eat healthy and to maintain physical activity in their lifestyle. So the other ones that we've included in are the Measure Up, which I'll go back into in a minute, the Swap It, Don't Stop It, and Shape Up Australia. So some of these you may have heard about, some of them you may not have. I remember seeing the Measure Up advert on the TV, which some of you may have seen as well. So the Measure Up campaign is to provide Australians with a very easy tool for understanding where they sit in terms of their health. And the campaign was primarily targeted for 25 to 50-year-olds who have children, and the secondary audience is in your 45 to 60-year-olds. And the basic aim there is to make sure that people are aware that if they have a large waist circumference, it's linked to lifestyle disorders like cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, being overweight, or potentially obese. So then the other one is your Swap It, Don't Stop It, and this is based on getting people to swap simple everyday changes to their lifestyle for healthier options. So some could be swapping big for small, so it's about your portion control. So perhaps rather than having a dinner plate, having a entree size plate just means that psychologically you still fill up your plate, but it doesn't look like you, because I don't know about you guys, but I find that if I fill up food in a big bowl, I'm like, oh, it doesn't look like much. Maybe I should eat more. And that's purely based on what I think is an appropriate size, which may not have anything to do with the actual portion size. So another one would be to swap often for sometimes. So that's swapping rather than having ice cream every night for dessert, maybe only having ice cream once a week as a occasional treat. So swapping fried for fresh. So rather than getting fish and chips and you get deep fried fish, going for the grilled fish option instead. Swap sitting for moving, so increasing your physical activity. So rather than staying at home watching TV, go for a walk around the local park, and rather than swap watching for playing. So rather than watching sport, why don't you actually go out and play some sports? And then the last one is the Live Lighter campaign in WA. And that is targeted at adults to increase awareness and motivation for healthy eating, physical activity, and healthy weight.